At First Choice Bank, we know you can't always make it before the bank closes. With our integrated teller, you can talk to a live person as late as 7 p.m. on weekdays and noon on Saturdays. It's not just an ATM, it's an ITM. First Choice Bank, your choice for banking.
Out with the old and in with the new. It's time to save big at Room to Room's New Year's sale. Store-wide markdowns 50 to 70% off. No tax. 48-month special financing. It's a new year at Room to Room Furniture in Tupelo. There's no place like home.
Mississippi's trusted weather experts. This is Mississippi Live Weather at 10.
There are still some questions getting into this weekend, but lining that up a little bit better as we get into the 10 o'clock broadcast. I'm meteorologist Gabe and welcome into Mississippi Live Weather at 10. Again, all eyes are on this weekend, and we're going to fine-tune that a little bit more as more of those model runs come out and our confidence either stays the same or increases or decreases. Again, tracking all that in just a moment. Let's first get into those headlines here in the Room to Room Weather Center, and let's start with the first one. Impacts are expected this weekend. Those ice accumulations, that's where we start to get some of those concerns because that weighs down some power lines. We talked to the CEO of Tom Bigby Electric, and he was walking us through that a little bit earlier, but just letting us know that folks are preparing, but power outages, travel impacts, those are expected as we get into that extended pattern. Flakes, they may flake out. Yeah, they're not exactly going to be the pretty winter wonderland that we usually want with the winter weather event. And honestly, that'd be best case scenario, but not shaping up to be that. And that snowfall continues to trend a little bit more north, meaning that our forecast, it's going to be rain and potentially freezing at the surface as we get into our weekend forecast. Rain chances, they're continuing until that winter weather threat. So rain chances continue Thursday. That's all they'll be. Just rain chances. Don't worry, it's not here just yet. So the first 12, as we get into those overnight hours, still watching those showers work their way through North Mississippi. Only expected to be 20 to 30% coverage overnight as that front kind of stalls out around the Golden Triangle and works that moisture out of the rest of the area. Once we get into later into our Thursday. But as you can see, impacts not going to be too extensive, only about 10% coverage by the early hours of our Thursday. Temperature-wise, only falling off into the low 40s, and that's the mildest that we will be once we enter this 7-day stretch. So temperature-wise, enjoy your forecast tomorrow because it literally is all downhill from there. And we're only talking about temperatures in that aspect, but you could also include the winter weather threats with that as well. As you can see, confidence levels still remaining the same as 5 and 6, even with the new model runs that are coming out. One of the things that are going to come out in the next 24 hours is some of those short-range runs going all the way through the weekend that can kind of tell us more of an alignment on the timing, but also an alignment on those impacts. And some of the short-range runs right now, they're getting a little bit more dicey. And again, we'll dissect that here in just a moment. That level 4 confidence level for some of those ice and sleet accumulations, that's the one that stands out because that's where we could see some dangerous impacts with those roadways and also with those power outages. And that's been the more concerning forecast. We honestly were rooting for snow whenever we saw this setup happen, but that has all trended more north and we have this warming layer aloft that's making for some of those winter weather impacts being the more icy side of things. And that those impacts, that level 4 confidence level and those as well, honestly could see that increase in getting into tomorrow if things remain the same and that confidence level increases with some of those short range runs. But tonight, you can see what we're dealing with right now, a hazard in and of itself there in Cleveland. The dense fog over the top of Cleveland is going to make for a hazardous commute home if you're like me and working through the 10 o'clock hour. 46 degrees there, and that dew point right around that same margin, meaning it is a very saturated forecast, and wind's not exactly going to be too strong. So those moist air, that saturated air, going to remain in the forecast as well. Mabin dealing with a few more showers down there in Oktibbeha County, seeing that fall right there on the lens of the camera. 50 degrees down there in Oktibbeha County, but nonetheless, giving us exactly what we need, some of that rainfall here in North Mississippi. Latest drought monitor comes out tomorrow. Excited to see how that has trended. And then here's a look at Blue Springs, and you can see some of those foggy conditions, especially looking out on I-22 heading towards New Albany. You can see basically a cloud on the ground. It is definitely a saturated forecast, and that's going to result in those dense fog conditions into those overnight hours. So what we're watching right now, there is a dense fog advisory for most of North Mississippi heading into tomorrow morning. So that's, of course, one of the things we need to note. But the next alert we need to watch is that winter storm watch in place until Sunday at 6 p.m. 6 p.m., not 6 a.m. We tracked that yesterday, and if you remember, it was more 6 a.m. out there towards Arkansas. Ours goes extended into our Sunday afternoon, meaning that our time frame We'll be setting up Friday night, but those chances don't fully clear out of the area until the latter part of our Sunday. Very extended time frame, very cold air. That's going to line up for those icy conditions like we mentioned just a moment ago. You can see that this winter storm potential going to impact not just us in North Mississippi. We're talking, the last I tracked, it was 12 states. It very well could be more than that now, but hang on, I'm doing the math. Oh yeah, we're at like 16 and I lost track of count. So either way, it's going to be impacting a lot of folks. Those hard freeze conditions also going to be up there, extreme cold, should I say. And even down around San Antonio, same thing. That extreme cold is in place. Extreme cold playing a part in our forecast moving into Monday and Tuesday. So lots of things to note as we get into this extended pattern. Let's go ahead and look at our Mama Justice Doppler radar and showcase that frontal boundary moving overhead. This is keeping those showers around overnight. This is keeping our showers around through our Thursday as well. This cold front stalling out and remaining right around the Golden Triangle, allowing for these showers to continue to remain in place. But this is the concern for Wednesday and Thursday. And honestly, there's no concern with it. All it is giving us is some of those light to moderate showers. Once we expand things out, you can see out there in the Pacific, that's where we're watching that next system setting up and getting closer and closer. Yes, every 1,000 miles, it's getting closer to North Mississippi. I mean, we're still a good 4,000 miles away. Do expect that to, actually, that's the secondary system. Let me get that actual right one. Forgive me on that one. Here's the system we're watching, 2,000 miles away. So that's the one we're watching, still an extended ways away, but that's working its way into the forecast heading into our Friday, really Friday night, and then into our Saturday. So let's bring it back in here to the North Mississippi area to track out these showers overnight and track out how this setup continues to happen. So with that front, I mean, you can see remaining right there on the southeast corner of our viewing area by 3 a.m. and continuing into those early morning hours. Some of this moisture continues to develop on the back end of that front, allowing for more chances for the start of our Thursday. As we get into our Thursday, mid to late morning and even into the afternoon, that front has very little movement attached to it, and that's why we continue to get these light showers developing on the back end. So have that rain gear ready, and do be prepared for a few more of those showers for our Thursday. But again, impacts not really going to be there. Maybe a few puddles on the ground, but that's the extent of what we're tracking on Thursday. I think Thursday, more of us are just going to be getting prepared for Friday as that winter weather threat moves in. So the next 24, limited moisture, limited chances are in the forecast, 20% throughout the day, even by the afternoon. But I would say our best chance of seeing impactful rainfall still at the front end of the day. But again, all of this, rainfall. No winter weather for our Thursday, no schools getting out on Thursday, and Friday still looks good to go for at least the start of the day, as you can see with those temperatures being above that freezing mark. But on the back end of the day, that's where we're still tracking, and that's one of the things we're going to look at coming up in the next 60 is timing out that winter weather potential. I wanted to set the scene for what we're getting right now and then talk the latest on that winter weather potential getting into later on in the show. So coming up in the next 60, we'll have that full breakdown coming up for you, as well as the impacts, the confidence levels, all of that, and an exclusive look at our Ice Finder, a Mississippi Live Weather exclusive, all of that coming up on Mississippi Live Weather at 10 in the next 60.
When choosing a dentist for our family, Tupelo Smiles was the answer for us. They greet us with warm smiles right when we walk in the door, and they make us feel so welcome. We love Tupelo Smiles.
Game day brings its ups and downs, celebration and disappointment, anxiety and relief, friends and enemies. You can always argue over who should have won, but everyone can agree on great food. Appetizers, entrees, drinks, party platters, or even the taste of sweet victory. There's something for every season at Eat With Us restaurants.
Right now, from the Room to Room Weather Center, here's meteorologist Gabe Maynor.
Well, dense fog advisories remain in place tonight and getting into our Thursday morning. So that's the first hazard to note in that extended forecast, and already getting some of those hazier conditions down there in Kosciuszko. Of course, a large part of this due to the moisture that we're seeing, still getting those light to moderate showers all across Attala County and really south of Highway 82, dealing with that moisture as well. So not just there in Kosciuszko. If we jump out a little bit east towards Macon, Noxubee County, you can see those hazy conditions as well. 51 degrees, and still with those showers in the forecast, it's going to make for a hazier start to the day. But Matt, we'll take hazy over ice, right?
You know, and one of the things is what happens there in Macon, for example. Macon is one of those spots where, you know, the trend has been slightly warmer. You've looked harder at 0Z models, late evening models than I have, and I think we'll have the debate back and forth on that here in a minute. But Macon's one of those locations where, I mean, is it fair to say it could be almost all rainfall at that spot?
It's not a bad case to make. I will say that right now. I mean, we're still getting those short range runs in, and those are kind of verifying that warming trend that the Euro and GFS were hinting at. And so kind of seeing that verified a little bit more makes me think it's a possibility, but with the cold air behind it, I'm curious to see how quickly things will dry up, if they dry up fast enough for maybe getting a potential glaze on the ground. And that's where it could be that icy forecast. Even if it does fall as rain at first, you're still having a wet ground in very cold air. The potential's still there, even down in Noxubee County.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I think, you know, there's still some overlap there. But, you know, talking to Leo tonight, and I posted something on social media about this, you know, on Facebook a few minutes ago, you know, as we were talking about, you know, the potential, and he's like, so no snow? I'm like, I don't really know anybody watching us here typically that has a good snow chance. I think maybe Northwest Mississippi maybe still has a chance, not a good chance. This is mainly transitioned to ice or rain. Agree?
Yes, 1,000,000% on that front, because it's just that warmer air, that warmer nose starting to lift up into North Mississippi. And if you look at some of those snowfall accumulations, I mean, that's all up in Tennessee. And even then, Tennessee is starting to get on the southern edge of that system just because of how things have trended. So ice.
Snow eater.
Yeah, the snow eater. I love that term because it almost has that negative connotation that we'd expect with it. Yeah, because you don't want it to eat our chances away, and that's exactly what it's doing, unfortunately.
So it's kind of like a dragon's breath or something like that, you know, just blowing in and incinerating the snow chances. I'll let you continue here. We'll talk more about, you know, and debate more on the models here in a minute. But, you know, I just wanted to, before we got too far, mention, you know, there are some spots that may be so far into the warm, and we're hoping Macon's one of those, that we end up missing out on the ice threat largely as a whole. But that will not be everybody, right?
That will not be everybody. Yes, like you mentioned, Northwest Mississippi has the highest potential at those winter weather impacts that we've been talking about. But those impacts, right now the corridor still looks like the Natchez Trace Parkway. Honestly, in regards to that winter weather threat, could be right along it, could be a little bit more south and east, but that's kind of that line that we're watching getting into this extended forecast and how that line maneuvers going forward. 45 degrees in Oxford tonight. That's a better chance of seeing some of those winter weather impacts because it is further north and west than Macon. So there you go. Depends on your positioning, and those impacts are going to follow suit. One note in that forecast, look at who's not in the winter storm watch. Macon. So ironic that was the camera put in. That was completely by accident, but that is one of two counties in our viewing area that are not under that winter storm watch. Doesn't exactly mean that there's not winter potential, but it means that it's not as high as other counties here in North Mississippi. And again, that Natchez Trace Parkway that extends all the way through Houston and Tupelo and well down there towards the southwest part of our viewing area, that's where we're watching for, because that northwest side of that line, that's where it has the highest potential for some of those impacts. And we're talking icy impacts, unfortunately, as that has trended a little bit more on the icier side. Our Mama Justice Doppler radar not letting us out of the woods just yet because moisture is still in the forecast. Just luckily, it's primarily rainfall. Actually, it's all rainfall. And as we've tracked this throughout the day, you can kind of see on that 6-hour loop how it was heavier earlier on and more widespread, but all of that moisture has since shifted out there towards the east and left us with some light showers there along and south of Highway 82. So continue to expect that into those overnight hours as this front has pretty much stalled over the top of us. But luckily, it has brought us some pretty significant moisture and pretty significant rain chances. Looking at some of these totals, we're talking Chula at around just under an inch. Kosciuszko, same thing, just under an inch. We are seeing those totals around Aberdeen, 3/4 of an inch. Bruce, same thing. Tupelo, about 1/2 of an inch. Up there towards Holly Springs, 1/2 of an inch as well. And even I see Clarksdale, about 1/2 of an inch too. So these rain chances have overperformed than what models were initially insisting yesterday, and that moisture was rebuilt quicker than what was originally anticipated on those models. That's a great thing, because if we look at some of those impacts and some of the drought monitor, it's still in place. So we need all of this rainfall. But one note with that forecast, do you see any blue? Do you see any red? Fortunately, that's a no right now. So all of this is going to be rainfall as it works its way through North Mississippi and off there towards Alabama. But that's a very fortunate thing for right now. We're continuing to enjoy it, and we'll enjoy some milder temperatures on our Thursday as a result of all of this moisture. You can see 30% chances overnight, allowing for that moisture to continue to be in place, and we're only falling into the low 40s for the start of our Thursday morning. Now, one note, that dense fog is expected because of all the moisture we've seen today. Very little wind on the backside of that front. It hasn't cleared it all out, and so we're going to see some of that fog developing overnight, and especially for that morning commute. So as we take a look at Futurecast, you can see this front continue to extend across North Mississippi, but watch how it just slows down once it reaches that Golden Triangle area. What this is going to do is allow some building on the backside of this front of those light showers, and those are continue to make impacts to the Golden Triangle and for folks along and south of Highway 82. That carries over to that Thursday morning, so if you're not dealing with fog, you're dealing with showers, but you could be dealing with both, some light showers and some of that fog as well. But if you look, that moisture in the forecast does keep those temperatures even more mild with the mid-40s expected. But the further we get away from those showers, we're talking 33 Holly Springs, 33 in South Haven. Now, take my word, this is as good as it's going to feel for a morning forecast for the next 7 days. That's how extreme these cold temperatures are getting. Yeah, 33, it's going to feel like summer. That might be a stretch, but you get what I'm trying to say in the fact that it's going to be a significant cool down. Wind chill drops out a few degrees as well, especially up there towards the northwest where that front has cleared and some of that drier air is pushing in behind this system. But as we get into our Thursday morning, you can see that front just right there behind me try to linger into the forecast and give us some more of those rain chances throughout our Thursday. Now, these will be very non-impactful, lower rain totals than what we had today by a significant margin, but light impact still expected, enough to turn the windshield wipers on that first setting. As we keep that going through the noontime hour, expect those showers to stick around. Very sporadic development, and I would say this is going to be southeast of the Natchez Trace corridor. Speaking of that same road we were mentioning a moment ago, we're going to see that in the southeast portion of our viewing area into 3 p.m. and carrying over into the late afternoon and early evening of our Thursday. Right in time for our Mississippi Live Weather Game of the Week. We'll look at that here in just a moment, that forecast down there in Calhoun City. But nonetheless, temperatures for a Thursday, again, as warm as we're going to see over the next 7 days. So enjoy it. Soak up the rainfall, but soak up these temperatures because they will not be here forever. 50 degrees Boonville, 53 Tupelo, 53 around Grenada, Water Valley, and 56 Kosciuszko with 55 in Belzona. But here's a look at our high school game of the week forecast. It is on Thursday night this week, and our tip-off is at 7:30. You do note that there is that 10% chance of showers in the forecast, even around Calhoun County. So as Okolona comes into town, should be a great 1A matchup. Excited to see the outcome of this game because let me say, both of these football teams, high-powered teams, and they are filled with athletes. So excited to see the outcome of this, and our Ethan Foster will be out there to join us, giving us the very latest scoop on both of these teams, both of which are doing pretty good this season. So it's going to be a good matchup for sure. 43 degrees by that final buzzer, not too bad temperature-wise, but again, this is something we get to enjoy before the main event kicks in and that winter weather forecast tips off. So let's get a look at our Futurecast Thursday night. And as you can see, there's that 10% chance of showers, potentially getting into Calhoun County, but even then, very little impacts are going to be expected. As we get into those overnight hours, you continue to see those showers remain in the forecast, but really dissipating on out and will carry over into a much drier pattern for at least the start of our Friday. The start of our Friday. Key word there. So as we look at our Friday morning forecast, again, temperatures not going to be below freezing. So anything that is still in the forecast precipitation-wise, going to be rain once again. We're not below freezing at all across the Magnolia State. 33 degrees is as close as we get in Senatobia, Tunica, and South Haven. 40 degrees Greenwood, 37 Houston, and 38 around Amory with 39 Vernon, Alabama. As we keep that Futurecast moving throughout our Friday, you can see the gloomy conditions that are already overhead. So moisture is still in the forecast, despite it being slightly drier for the start of the day. But as we work our way into our Friday afternoon and really into those evening hours as well, we are all paying attention to what's happening out west. One note with this forecast. This is our HRRR model, which goes 48 hours into the future to let us know what is expected to happen. So this is our first look at some of these showers developing and some of these potential snow and ice showers as well developing there in the Midwest. Watch how this all carries over towards the east as we get into our Friday afternoon, but a large part of that moisture that's moving into Arkansas early on into the afternoon is going to be rainfall. But what this is noting is that it's verifying that these chances are going to be pushed later on into the day. If you note North Mississippi, a few rain showers, but it's not cold enough to make any winter weather. So those are just going to be rain showers by 3 p.m. And with the bulk of the moisture still out there towards the west, I think we're going to be good to get through our Friday, at least school-wise and for the workday, before those impacts will start to move in. I know, students, I'm probably your least favorite person right now that I just said that, and I know my wife is saying, Gabe, dang it, I'm sorry. But as we get into our Friday evening forecast, there you're getting that moisture to start to move into Arkansas. And if we zoom that in a bit, you can see that there is some pink. And that pink is going to be some of that wintry mix. But that's still a ways away, and that's still warmer than what we were tracking 24 hours ago. So things have trended in the right direction to a sense in regards to the most significant winter impacts being further north. But this is just the start of the event, and we're out of data at this point, so we can't go any further with the HRRR model, but as good as it's going to look so far, Matt, is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, that's the warmer air, and the thing we're going to have to watch on this is if that really cold air happens, it's got to be kind of the icebox effect, right? You have to have the snow, the significant snow to the north, and with every model run that it shifts that farther north, that then limits our, I guess, basement number as far as the cold is concerned deeper into this. So as you can see, clearly though, Friday, we are still good. Everybody's getting to school. Everybody's coming home from school without really any impacts. In saying that, I still wouldn't at all be shocked to have a couple of those little bits of green we have over top of us have a rogue sleet pellet or two. Sometimes that runs faster on this, and I'm not going to say surprises us, but certainly maybe startles us a little bit. That wouldn't be a scenario where we ended up having any kind of travel disruptions from it. It's just one of those things that sometimes happens, so don't be shocked about. That doesn't mean everything's starting earlier. That's just sometimes the way the atmosphere is kind of getting charged up and ready to go.
Exactly. And if we look at these temperatures for high temperatures on Friday, just verifies that in even more of a sense, because nowhere are we sitting below freezing. So anything that does happen on our Friday afternoon, all of that going to be rainfall, at least for our afternoon hours. Again, overnight things cool off, and that's where things start to shift. But for our Friday afternoon, I think we're in as good of shape as possible to at least get through our Friday forecast. So I know several schools watching, several schools monitoring, but as we get into that extended pattern, that's when we expect the impacts to move in place. It's going to be Friday night into Saturday and into Sunday, as you can clearly see behind me. Now, one note with this forecast, this is our strike model, and we also have our GFS model that was also being issued, and those latest updates coming in actually as we speak. That 0Z run should be coming in here shortly. One note with this forecast, we mentioned it at 6. Hurricane hunters have gone out to the system in the Pacific to get the latest data on where things stand. So, all of that data then is filtered into these models and allows those to be a little bit better aligned with where things sit. So as we look at our strike model here at the 10 o'clock hour, we're going to look at some of these differences, and this is the latest run. But also a big note in the forecast is as we get into tomorrow morning with meteorologist Maggie McCauley, those long track models, both the Euro and the GFS, those will be better aligned with the data that's happening currently and give us a better idea on the positioning and impacts that are expected. So as we get a look at our Friday night, you can see that pink already into the forecast, but the note with the pink, and Matt's been mentioning it, it's going to be rain, it's going to be sleet, it's going to be freezing rain, and potentially a few flakes mixed in there. At the surface, it is cold enough for that to reach all the way to the ground, but the one note is it's just that warm air aloft, that snow eater we were talking about earlier on this evening, that's going to make these snowflakes melt, and they just don't reform. That's not how the atmosphere works. I think it was today, Annalise, my wife, she was telling me that she was telling her students about snowflakes and things like that and how they form, and basically letting them know that once they fall, once they melt, they can't regrow into a snowflake. There's a certain zone where those snowflakes are allowed to form, and beyond that, that's when the snowflake potential just basically goes to zero if there's any point in the atmosphere that it's above freezing. And we have that here in North Mississippi. So snowflakes, we've been saying Northwest Mississippi, but looking at the latest runs, I'm not overly sold on those flakes happening, at least not on the front end of the system. As we go about that morning forecast, you can see temperature-wise still right around that freezing mark, right along that Natchez Trace corridor. So on the northwest side of this, I do expect it to be that wintry mix, but on the southeast side, 41 degrees in Macon, 42 down around Aliceville, that's on the warmer side, and we stay around that same margin all throughout the day, if not a little bit warmer. But again, we're watching this freezing line and where that forms for that potential winter weather impact. One note that I will say with this forecast is the pink that's showing up, it's also lining up with some of these yellows and reds. What that means is that it's going to be a heavier output of this potential sleet or freezing rain. That's going to make the potential impacts increase pretty substantially by the time we get into those heavier sections. As we get into our Saturday morning and into the Saturday afternoon time frame, those heavier sections are going to be something to monitor. But look at the strike model. Look at how much rain is in the forecast. That's a big note going forward. And if this does stick around, this is definitely a better outlook to a sense, because it is at least too warm for winter weather to happen. But it doesn't last forever. Watch how this changes. So we get into the afternoon, and you can see that temperature-wise, we're into the upper 30s, too warm to sustain any of that winter weather. But all of that refreezes overnight, because very quickly those temperatures start to drop again, and we're back below freezing. So any moisture that has happened, starting to freeze at the surface, and then we get more of that wintry mix on the back side of this. And those working their way throughout a larger portion of North Mississippi, and temperature-wise, going to be a little bit colder as well. So these heavier sections that continue to move through overnight, allowing for additional accumulating totals to be in the forecast. So totals, a little bit hard to diagnose right now, but we are tracking enough to where this will be an impactful forecast. Sunday morning, continue to see those heavier sections right along Oxford, Water Valley, and Cleveland. That's 3 a.m. and then into our Sunday morning commute. I mean, look at the widespread impacts that we'll see with this potential sleet and freezing rain effect. Expanding it out, you can see that the snowfall forecast well up north and northwest into northern Arkansas. So some of our friends out there are going to be dealing with the different type of forecast. But here in North Mississippi, I think the flakes may have flaked out on us and moved away from North Mississippi and left us with this icy forecast instead. I know that disappoints some people.
Clear, I am sure the flakes have moved out. There's just too much warm air aloft.
Yes.
I mean, again, weird things happen, but almost always when this warm nose of the mid-level winds, what we're calling the snow eater, when that moves in, it very rarely in models all of a sudden gets pushed back out. It's something that's poorly resolved on the front end, and models do a better job with on the tail end. So initially it's like, ooh, look at this snow. That's when your iPhone's sending the ridiculous, hey, look, it could be 2 feet of snow. And you're like, whoa, not from us. Let's be crystal clear on that. And then now it's like, well, wait, nothing? So that is, once the warm nose shows up, once that snow eater shows up, it doesn't usually retreat. So I'd be really shocked if all of a sudden we were talking about significant snowfall again, unless there's some kind of final wave that comes in, maybe late Sunday, which, as you can see, is something strike model does kind of sort of have out there, doesn't it?
There's a few flakes. There's a few flakes, and it's not impossible that we see those on the backside. And the thing with at this point is we have that frozen layer on the ground in our especially northwest counties, and potentially all the way here into Lee and Chickasaw County. Like, it can go all the way up to
potentially. The Golden Triangle's not out of the mix on this yet.
Exactly.
I'd like that, it being that this is Wednesday night, I don't want to send too strong of a signal in that direction. That's why those winter storm watches are in effect. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, no, and you're exactly right. And so because we get that kind of glaze on the ground potentially, then any flakes that fall beyond that, they're going to sustain and just add to those totals. So it's not going to be impossible at all to maybe get a little bit of an accumulating total up there towards South Haven and Tunica, especially because we have that cold enough air and those flakes potentially moving into the forecast as well. Strike not as aggressive on those flakes. GFS was a little bit aggressive on those as well. But it just shows you that there's still some discrepancies in those models, and something we're hoping to iron out as we get into that extended forecast. But let's just be 100% honest where we're sitting right now. This is an ice event, and this is where we're sitting right now. So those that are wanting a winter wonderland, those that want a snowy forecast, then make a trip up to Matt, where was it? Russellville, Kansas? Is that where you lived? That's where they need to head if they want any of that winter wonderland potential.
Russell, Kansas. Because it's clearly cold enough back there, and they're almost always limited by the amount of moisture. This system does a good job of producing moisture farther north. And yeah, up that direction. I mean, even a large chunk of Tennessee, even northern Arkansas, we've seen some of that snow retreating. This is still Wednesday. This is early still on this, but impacts, including slick roads, still possible. I just just watching the chat, I just want to be clear, as much as we talk about the rainfall, you've got to be clear that ice is still very much on the table, and freezing rain is rain that freezes on contact, not just cold rainfall.
Yeah, so it's not the situation that we wanted for a multitude of reasons. Snow is less hazardous because, I mean, if you've driven on snow or driven on ice, you kind of know the difference that it's going to be, or ever felt it, you kind of know that ice is a little bit more slick. And so that's where our concerns increase with this being more of an ice event, at those impacts being a little bit higher. And that's not just for travel, that's also for power outages. So this is not what we wanted, what I think anyone wanted. If I preferred anything, I guess you could say I was on Team Snow. I wore light blue in hopes of maybe getting a few flakes in the forecast. It just didn't happen. And so we're just not in that forecast anymore. So as we get into the latter part of our Sunday, any of that precipitation that has happened, it's not going anywhere. I mean, look at what we're going to be feeling. Temperature-wise, we're in the mid-20s Tupelo. Teens already, Tunica and Holly Springs, and this is Sunday night at 8 p.m. A lot of time for this to cool off, and we expect it to do exactly that as we get into that extended pattern. We'll look at that here in just a moment. I want to focus on Ice Finder a little bit more because this is a Mississippi Live weather exclusive that shows you where the highest potential for that ice is. And this is, of course, looking at that national blend of models. And so this is the latest look at those expected outcomes. And so right now you can see that Ice Finder tracking a little bit of that ice, that likelihood, again, on the lower end, but getting all the way up to about 30% there for southern and central parts of Arkansas. But look at this. We're getting all the way up to about 60% there just south of Little Rock, with that 30 to 40% line getting all the way into northwest Mississippi. This is as that system continues to build, but that green line, I mean, you talk about lining up almost perfectly. That is very close to that Natchez Trace corridor where we're tracking that potential being a little bit higher up here and lower down around Golden Triangle.
Let's be clear here for a second. That is still showing 10%. That's what that green line is. 10% likelihood. You can see there is ice depicted where it's less than 10% likelihood. You know, this is a confidence, graphic. And the reason the confidence is so questionable for locations east during the day Saturday is because of that warm air at the surface. So, again, you're going to see some higher totals here for spots that might not see any ice. And you're going to see, lower for spots where it really, really hones in. This is the way this graphic works out, is it kind of smooths things out so you don't have the same peaks that sometimes you have, but you also spreads it sometimes a little bit too wide, which is why you have to pay very close attention to the color on this, where the confidence is greater. And this is greater than yesterday for locations in West Mississippi. But tomorrow we expect this to really start to lock down on that higher confidence level because of, the way this all goes together.
For sure. And so this is why, for all the many reasons, and of course we are biased, but this is a helpful tool to use to track where that potential will be. And yes, this is a Mississippi Live weather exclusive, so keep it with us for the very latest as we track this out, because you're not going to find this anywhere else here in North Mississippi, and I think, honestly, the entire country at this point. So as we get into our Sunday morning, you can see, yes, there's those totals that Matt was mentioning, but that percentage chance, only around 20% as of right now, but expect that to be fine-tuned. But it's fortunate right now that those chances are on the lower side of things. In the grand scheme of things, they could definitely be higher, but as of right now, we're looking decent. I don't know if that's the right word right now, but nonetheless, we don't want that to be any higher as we get into this extended pattern. So hopefully that continues to be the case. All right, I want to just manually advance this here, because by that point, we're not seeing any other threats beyond the weekend forecast. Here's where our confidence currently stands. And level 4 for some ice and sleet accumulations. I would argue snowfall might be dropped to level 1 heading into our Thursday, just because of how things have trended. But that ice and sleet, again, not what we are favoring, but that's what we expect whenever we get into this forecast. And all of the ice and sleet accumulations going to be impacting travel. These basically are correlated right together, and that's where we're going to see travel impacts with those roads being hazardous. So that's why we've been recommending anyone that has plans this weekend, reschedule them. Just to be on the safe side, we don't want anyone to have to be on those roads with the potential of it being these hazardous travel impacts. Sub-freezing temperatures, more than 3 days. That's also a level 4 threat, and that's going to be the forecast beyond our winter weather threat. And Matt, you were mentioning the app a moment ago, saying that we weren't tracking those extreme amounts whenever it came to snowfall. You know what we were tracking? Extreme cold heading into next week. And
yes, and some folks were, really asking about those really, really cold temperatures. And listen,
it is still possible we have to tweak those temperatures up if there's less snowfall to the north of us. So that is one of the things that we are going to be working back and forth on, is just how cold those get. And so all this kind of figures into something here. This is kind of a 1 through 5 sort of confidence level graph here. I want to bring you over to something that again will debut here on Mississippi Live. I don't know that we ever showed this at the TV stations. Give me just a moment here to see if I can populate this in. This is the Winter Storm Severity Index, and I want to bring you here to day 3. And so what we're looking at here, and this shows Friday. Hold on, I'm gonna double check that date. I think that date actually should read probably Friday night and early Saturday. When we start talking about Friday night and early Saturday, where there's greater potential for winter storm to have issues, that's going to be in these kind of reddish, orangish sort of areas that we show up on there. And the reason that's there is not because of snow impact. As you can see, the snow impact, confidence on that, major impacts, that is all back to the north and west. And this is something that only goes 3 days out, which is the reason why it says Friday. It's really Friday night, into early Saturday morning there. And so snow load, again, that's not the issue for us. Now, you don't have to go very far to the north, where maybe out here toward Little Rock or Forest City, Arkansas, that there's possibility toward Memphis, or maybe up there toward Hernando. But I would say, based on the very, very latest data coming in tonight, that possibility is not a huge likelihood. And as you can see there, for most of North Mississippi, that's probably way confident on that. Our impacts come from that potential for ice impacts. This says Friday. It's really Friday night, early Saturday, and through the day Saturday that we're looking at this here. And as you can see, that does include most locations in North Mississippi with at least a chance, maybe some minor impacts, Golden Triangle. It's going to come down to how much warm air there is here. But again, if you're looking for a one-stop, how do you boil this down graphic on locations, this is the way to do that, using our ice impacts on what we call the Winter Storm Severity Index. And so clearly, as you'll note here, north of Clarksdale, out here, Senatobia, Holly Springs, Boonville, northward, there's going to be a zone where accumulating icefall could be significant, depending on just how much moisture ends up falling. So Gabe, you showed it one way. This is another way to show it. Again, the 1 through 5, comes down to our confidence. I would say that I'm almost at that point. We can go 1. Yeah, I know we go 1 with that there. I think I'm keeping level 4 on that. On the heavy rainfall, see, I need a level difference between these two in our discussion, right? Like the ice has to be a level above the heavy rainfall. But clearly, I think the bottom two that we've said from the get-go remain significant. Multi-day travel impacts probable, and then sub-freezing temperatures for multiple days, again, stressing electrical infrastructure. One of the things that was really interesting, I talked to Ben Luna, who is the managing meteorologist for Tennessee Valley Weather, one of our affiliates in the National Weather Network up in Lawrenceburg, Tennessee. They kind of cover, obviously, the Tennessee Valley. And they were talking at an emergency management meeting there about the pumps for natural gas in the community and how those are generator based. So if they end up with catastrophic power loss up there, that there are generators that actually help pump the natural gas. But those generators that are run by TVA have a limited amount of fuel. And when they run out of that fuel, that then limits the natural gas being pumped along. Now, I don't know how that situation fares in our area, whether or not TVA has a different setup in our situation with Atmos Energy. I'm sure there's different redundancies involved there. But that was one of those things that, when he said that, I was like, there's a lot of failure points in infrastructure that you and I don't realize. And hopefully this doesn't become a situation where we test any of those. But the icing situation, I'd say, is more severe for them up there. And for some parts of our area, power outages remain a possibility. And certainly very slick roadways, one of the big headlines.
For sure. And again, this will be more aligned getting into our forecast tomorrow morning with meteorologist Maggie McCauley, because the HRRR model goes 48 hours. And what's 48 hours past tomorrow morning? It's Saturday morning. So we see the onset of that event. Maggie took my thunder. we see the onset of that event, and she'll be tracking the very latest on that coming up on your Thursday morning. So make sure to tune in for the very latest. Again, team coverage heading into this event just to make sure that you guys are staying on the safe side. And of course, Matt and I will be back Thursday night with your latest forecast models, but also your highlights for our Mississippi Live Weather Game of the Week. But Matt, it's going to be an interesting time for sure, tracking the latest on these winter weather impacts, but also the cold weather expected into that extended pattern. So looking at these temperatures real quick, I don't want to just skim over the 7-day. Look at, the percentages from Friday through Sunday, lasting well into Sunday afternoon, long period of time. But once we get into Monday, it actually brings in a whole new graphic that we have. I think this is the first day we've ever aired it in our time here on Mississippi Live Weather. And it basically just says cold because it's extreme cold moving into the area with single digits Monday and for your Tuesday. And 4 degrees, I'm going to be honest, it's on the higher side on the national blend of models. And so this is a forecast that you could see get even colder heading into the start of next week. So it's going to be awful. It's going to be awful, just point blank simple. So having ways of staying warm, getting prepared, because we do expect that this event happening this weekend, for folks that get that winter precipitation, it's going to linger Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and all the way into Tuesday. Maybe melting by Tuesday afternoon just a bit, but yes, this could stick around all the way up until midweek. So that's where we're talking about significant cold. We're also talking about the chance for that wintry mix. So we want you guys to stay prepared, and the best way to do so is get that plan in place right now. Heard several people packing their emergency kits just in case things happen. We're getting our flashlights, getting new batteries for it. We're also getting my generator that I had back in college. We're going to get that back out to hopefully get the house going and get the house staying warm, and keep the equipment ready because Matt, we can tell them the secret. Well, I'm getting an at-home studio part-time just in case things happen. And
yeah, I mean, it's one of the beautiful things is we're able to decentralize and not kind of all have to travel because we're trying to prepare for the fact that even we should set a good example and not travel. You mentioned the generator, and we talked to Scott Hendricks with Tom Bigby Electric Power Cooperative. And if there's one thing that for the about 1,000 people we still have watching out there on all the social medias plus all the people on the app, I want to make sure to say something very clear before you end up checking in for the night. And that is, if you have a generator and you happen to plug that into the outlets of your house, that could backfeed the line once the power comes back on, and that can easily kill a lineman trying to get your power back on. So if you're going to use a generator, Mr. Maynor as well, you need to make sure that it is hooked up properly by a professional, or in your situation, you might just be running one extension cord inside to the house and then powering a few things off of that, as opposed to trying to just plug it into a wall outlet and hope for the best that it can power the house. That's number one, that burns stuff up. That's how you blow up a TV and stuff. You're like, ooh. So don't do that. But obviously just be smart and be careful, because your choices here could end the lives of other people. And then the other factor with generators, just make sure it's far enough away from the house that the exhaust doesn't get carried even close to you, because even if you can't smell it, carbon monoxide is a odorless killer, frankly, that replaces, with each breath the amount of oxygen that you could inhale, and thus you essentially suffocate silently in the middle of the night. That negative to say, I understand it's going to be cold. Especially if we end up in a scenario where we have multiple days where folks don't have power, which for some locations remains a possibility. But we don't want anybody getting hurt or dying. Yeah, obviously there are some issues there as well. And again, we've talked a lot about these faucet covers for outside faucets, making sure the folks at Absolute Cleaning Restoration, they have these there for you. You slip one of these over top of your faucet, but ultimately you can use a towel and tie a knot around it. You can buy something at a hardware store. Just make sure to try to reduce the issues on the front end related to this.
Well, I'll be honest, I took your towel method because I've not heard of that before. And so we tied that on one of the more significant freezes back in December. But once I heard about the Absolute promo, I texted them immediately and said, save me too. I'm going to come pick them up. So still need to go grab those before we get into this event. But that's definitely a great promo to have and to be a part of.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, I think that we've kind of hit the nail on the head tonight in regards to what we can expect. Is there any questions that folks have in the chat maybe about this forecast?
Someone's mentioning turn off the main breaker. That's one way to not backfeed. I don't really want to advertise different workarounds. There's a bunch of different things if you read on the internet on how you can make a generator to try to power the house. Just understand that a lot of electronics are very sensitive, and while I absolutely would say we should be concerned about the linemen and women trying to go out there and get the power back on, and that should be enough. Understand that if not properly hooked up, a generator can blow some stuff up. And maybe it's not something that's obvious it messed it up to begin with. It's not always, especially some of the smaller generators, not always clean power going back in, what we call sine wave power. And computers, sensitive electronics, they need that.
Exactly. Well, and we have more.
Just kind of watching the chat with that. That was just one of the things that stuck out to me.
Yeah. And if there's any more, feel free to interject. But basically, what I was going to say with the generator stuff, the generator info, we have graphics that we're going to debut heading into tomorrow because that's part of our preparation. And so we can talk more detail about, ways you can stay safe, how you need to prepare those generators and things of that nature. So kind of heading into Thursday, we're going to do preparatory stuff. How are we going to get prepared for the event that we expect to take place over the weekend? And then, of course, Friday is going to be, what are we tracking? How quickly is this about to move in? When to expect it? All of those latest details. Again, we're walking you through this whole process on the Mississippi Live Weather app, so make sure to download that today. Free and available on iOS and Android, so make sure to scan the QR code on the bottom of your screen. If you want to join the conversation, you can, of course, join us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, or X, I apologize. Any of those three methods, and you can talk to us, ask those questions, and we'll be happy to answer them here on Mississippi Live Weather. Next broadcast, bright and early with meteorologist Maggie McCauley, having the latest on those model runs, and it's going to be key to the forecast going forward. That's at 6:30, 7, and 7:30, and we'll be back. I'll be live at your game of the week, and Matt will be live in the Room to Room Weather Center, tracking everything you need to know for that forecast ahead.
Growing up, Gabe was naturally curious. When he began to discover weather, Gabe just didn't want to know what was happening, but he wanted to know why it was happening. Gabe became fascinated with tornadoes, and it impacted his life. He wanted to pursue a career in meteorology. Even though Gabe grew up in Alabama, Mississippi has now become his home.